Welcome to the Algarve. Algarve in English by Conectv. Hi, welcome back to Conectv Algarve. This is our English-speaking programme where we are addressing all sorts of different projects and subjects, tourism, services. Today, particularly, we're talking about the modern methods of construction with Bill Browne, who has far more experience than most. So the first question is why this is so important to Portugal. And as a real estate agent, the big crisis here is not having enough housing. When we do find a plot of land and we do put the plans in, we have the architects draw the plans up. We submit those plans, they go back and forth for a couple of years, 2 or 3 years, especially in the Lule district. And then we start construction, and that construction will take probably 2 years. So there has to be other ways, and of course there are. And I'm joined today by Bill, who's going to explain why lightweight steel construction is the way forward. Bill, welcome.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cathy.
I know you've been here since 2005. I can't believe we haven't met before with all the mutual friends we have.
Exactly.
So you've, as I said, you've got a wealth of experience with this, starting in the UK, coming over to Portugal, and you made moves to introduce this lightweight steel construction back in 2005.
2005,
more or less.
That's correct.
And I know, unfortunately, bad timing, Bill, because we then had, of course, the financial crisis and the big steel cutting machine that you had brought over, I understand you then had to take back to the UK.
That's correct, yes.
Okay, so and we haven't moved on here in Portugal really since then, but I understand other areas have. So who has adopted this?
Okay, let me start by first of all letting the viewers understand that construction in Portugal is very traditional, and it has relied upon a lot of water usage with concrete reinforced with rebar, reinforced steel. Every part of that construction needs to take time and uses an awful lot of labour. What I want to talk to you today about is what I call the new wave of construction. This has swept across America. It reached England probably when I introduced steel in 1990 from the US.
Into England?
Into England. That was the first project that was done, was in 1981 in Liverpool, was the first project. We imported the light steel from Chicago, from United States Gypsum at the time. Now, as it's moved along and the need for housing has become even more urgent, today I read in the newspapers that UK has a major housing crisis. We know that Portugal has a housing crisis like everywhere else in Europe. The methodology that I'm putting forward today is called light steel framing, and it is based upon the utilization of computers in design. It's very important that we take this from the beginning stage where we receive an architect's drawing, we can interpret it with our design team. Online we can produce a drawing based upon the steel methodology of building the house or apartments or factories. It can be used for anything. We do not need a great deal of foundations. The weight to length ratio within steel is the best that there is in any construction medium. The machines that we use, which is really the key now, if we think about big boys Meccano, we all remember Meccano.
We do.
It had holes in it and you bolted it together, and if you got the bolts in the wrong place, it didn't fit. The way that the machines produce the steel, as you can maybe see from some of the images behind, we feed the computer disk into the machine, telling it exactly what part of the building we want it to make. It then rolls the steel, turns it and bends it, punches all the holes that are required for the screws. Each piece of steel is identified by a number that is related back to a drawing. so that it's almost impossible to get it in the wrong place, and we bundle them together, all ready to build a wall.
So can I ask a question, Bill? One of the things that attracted me to Portugal was that every single villa, every single apartment is different.
Right.
Whereas in the UK, you'll get your housing estate and it's one on top of another on top of another. There's no identity, there's no personality. Okay. Whereas here you can have something at 5 million next to something that's 350,000. Can you do that with steel frame, or is it that sort of rigid Meccano?
I think we have to understand that there is efficiency in cost by repetition. Okay.
Absolutely, yeah.
So if we talk about housing for the middle earning wages, then probably repetition of units is going to be the way forward.
No.
Possibly.
No.
Now, each unit that we produce can be individual. So a big houses designed by the Joel Cabritas, the ones by Jamie Cortino, they can all be interpreted as to how they would work with steel. My own house, which we built in 2005 in the Almansell area, was an individual design by Joel Cabrita, who is now a very well-known architect. We interpreted the original construction methods of concrete into steel, produced the panels. That house we actually started to build in the April of that year and moved in the October.
See, this is the incredible thing, isn't it? Because we need to look at the cost, obviously, as you just said. However, it's that long and drawn out process. And if you're talking about a construction that doesn't require the same amount of manual labour, doesn't require the dirt,
the amount of water,
the cement and the water and if you don't need all of that, you're speeding up that process massively. As I understand, you've got your steel frame, and you have your exterior and interior plasterboard,
correct,
and screed.
Yeah,
not a brick in sight.
No, you do not need brick. The way that we would construct we would involve a product also from Holland called Lewis decking, which is a trapezoidal section that we lay across the joists once we've done them. So you can stand up one floor of a house in one day with the panels. You prop them up. You can then put the floor down, which is just a series of steel joists, all made to measure. You then put the Lewis decking on the top, which acts as the base to receive a flooring cover, but also forms the crash deck for the next level.
So are you talking about something, and forgive me, I'm asking for layman's terms here. When you build home in the UK, you have your floor, you have a gap, you have your wooden flooring. Is that the sort of thing you're talking about?
Yes, but that's all in steel.
Yeah,
and the steel,
but you've got that gap underneath. So
you've got the gap because we need the gap for two reasons. First of all, every piece of metal that we produce has holes in it ready to receive any of the services, the utilities. The same goes with the floor. We can pass the electrics and the plumbing through the floor as well. But the important thing is that the second day, the third day, you can actually put the second floor on, then you put the roof on. You then put an external form of cladding, be it a cement board or an exterior quality plasterboard. You've already ordered your windows and your doors ahead.
Which of course takes the time again, because I think,
as in Portugal at the moment, they wait until they've actually formed the openings. They then measure the opening sizes, and then they order the doors and windows. We can have those going in on day 4 or day 5 with a waterproof membrane going onto the roof. We can be fitting out the outside of the building at the same time that we're putting the electrics, the plumbing, the kitchens, the bathrooms. And if we were to take it further with volumetric construction, we could produce the bathrooms and the kitchens already completely plumbed and wired out. Put them into the site first. It all depends on cost, speed. Cost and time is money.
Am I right in thinking that by having the infrastructure, your pipes and things in that open wall, if you were to then build out later on, it would be easier than with a standard constructions we've got now.
Yes, the way things are moving
right
today, it's connectability, sustainability. We must realise that steel is 100% reusable, using minimal amounts of water. There is nothing that is more valuable to the Algarve at the moment and the rest of Portugal, and probably most
Europe.
of the world, is water. It's more important than
we're
oil.
Fourth year into a water crisis, aren't we?
How much water gets used in a concrete house? Also the curing time of concrete. You put your first columns in, you have to wait then so many weeks for it to achieve its full strength before you can put the floor in. You put the floor in, you acroprop it, you go away, you have to wait another so many weeks until it's dried. This is all time wasting.
We're just talking about days.
We're talking days, not months.
The thought of being on the second floor in 2 days is crazy.
And a lot of these things I learned through my vast experience in construction, particularly with the way that the likes of Sir Stuart Lipton and Peter Rogers worked with Broadgate, and how efficiency...
In London, we should say.
In London. That was in the City of London back in the mid-80s. They were revolutionising the way that construction happened. Coordination is the key word. You have to take the tablets. You have to coordinate. If everything is not brought together to the right timescales, you can sit and watch buildings sitting there waiting. Who's coming next? I don't know. Well, shall it be the electrician? Shall it be the plumber? The great thing about the knowledge I gained over 50 years in construction, traveling around the world, looking at new ideas, new methods, new ways of doing things. At my age of 74, I can see this new wave sweeping across Europe, coming into Portugal, and I have an unfinished business in trying to get there. So that's the reason that I'm pushing this method so hard at the moment. We have architects in Portugal who are working alongside me, young people in their mid-40s looking to find ways to do things differently. We have people that we've been talking to who have avenues into the way in which finance for building houses, particularly for the workers. This is a major need at the moment. And we also need to satisfy the clients coming in from America, from Holland, from France, who want their house. They want it reasonably quickly. Yeah. They want it finished on time. They want quality, and we can deliver that.
And this was where one of the things I was asking about, because there's also the want for character. So they'd all like the older house, but they want it to have all the new pluses. They want it to be eco-friendly. They want it to be thermally insulated. And of course, I live in a house that's probably 35 years old. A couple of the windows do not fit.
And can I ask you, Cathy, in the winter, and sometimes, do you get
freezing,
sort of cold areas in the corners where it can cause damp and it can...
Do you know what? I don't.
Right.
I don't. The wind and the rain does whistle in through the gaps under the windows.
Okay.
Also, the floor, the ceiling, the floor...
Yes, the concrete.
...is not as thick as it should be.
Okay.
We were replacing a bathroom, and they used what you call a circular saw to take something up when it came through the ceiling.
Okay.
But it's it's great, and it's relatively cool in the summer, and it's relatively warm in the winter. So everything else is fine. But the things we're talking about are very typical of original builds, and a lot of it, I think, possibly the gaps I have now, is based on the fact that we have this little bit of seismic activity on a regular basis. I know we had a 5.9 or 5.6, 5.9 the other day. Yeah. It's not often that we get those, but we do get regular things on a weekly basis of 1, 2, even last night I think it was a 3.2 or 3.4
okay.
that's been registered as normal activity. So I think that normal activity, I've probably moved a bit over the years. Okay. So where do we stand with this? Because I know this was a question when you first brought that machine in. There was is this going to be earthquake proof or tremor? We don't really have the earthquakes.
Okay, let me answer two questions there. One is the seismic activity, and the second one is thermal insulation. Okay, and they're two separate questions. Dealing with seismic, it's been proved that to deal with the seismic movement, you either make your house absolutely solid. You could build like a multi-story car park in concrete to make it not move. The steel solution, which has been borne out by hurricanes and tremors throughout North America, is to use a frame construction where if there is a tremor, there's a slight movement and it just settles straight back again.
That makes more sense to me.
We originally in 2005, we actually produced a tremor machine on a computer that showed my house shaking to a certain degree and then settling straight back again.
This one here in Portugal?
This one here in Portugal. So we don't have any issue at all with seismic movement. It's approved throughout the whole of Europe, Lisbon, Lule, everywhere.
And of course, in America, if they do have an earthquake,
massive problems.
Massive. So you mentioned that this is being used in America. At what sort of level have we got?
Framed construction. On my first visit in the mid-80s, framed construction is the normal method of construction for houses in America. Now, of course, they've got an amazing amount of wood available. So wood framing was preferred to steel framing. But then you have a termite issue. So wood framing in Portugal could be a major issue, like it is, and you've also got the echo issue. But if I can turn around for a minute to the thermal insulation, because on my first trip to the States, I met a great guy who had founded a business called Drive It, which is exterior insulation, called outsolation. We've all heard of insulation. This is outsolation because it can be proved by test methods and by calculation that insulation is best on the outside. So what we've produced and can produce is a rain screen, water vapor permeable product to go on the outside of these steel houses, so that it acts like a coffee cup.
Is that like we see on the outside? It's like a net.
Yes, it's based upon a mesh with a polymer acrylic render. The render is not cement, it's a polymer acrylic. It is flexible so that it can move. We don't get cracks like we get with concrete. It's a part of the system. It's not suitable for high rise particularly because we have to be very aware of fire issues. So we must address that. But fire tests have all been done on all these products.
And here we have a lot of regulations that prevent having multi-storey.
Exactly. We must be very, very careful with that. But I think that the marrying together of efficient use of labour, lack of use of water, speed of erection, ease of erection, in effect, we can actually train people. Now, as I said to you before, Cathy, I've always looked at training as an investment and not a cost. And the construction industry in the UK, the same as most places in the world, has now stopped training. And that is why we've got such a shortage of people, because everybody wants to cut out cost. Yeah. And it isn't cost, it's an investment. It has to be. I see the future for light steel framing in Portugal to be one of the major ways in which Portugal can actually catch up with the rest of Europe, be ahead of the rest of Europe. The partners that I'm talking to, we want to grow the market and grow the solutions. You have your partners in the UK and here, don't you? I have partners in the UK. One of British leading light steel framing companies. One of the joint manufacturers worked for me from when he was leaving school. Frameclad is the name. Next week, 17th, 18th of September, I'm going to be in the off-site exhibition with Frameclad, showing to the UK mainly about what can be done. Volumetric, off-site constructions, anything one of my great things, Cathy, as I said to you the other day when we were chatting, you buy two things in your life that cost you a lot of money. One is a house and one is a car. Now you get the car manufactured, let's just say from Nissan in Sunderland, and every part that goes into that car is made ready to fit. They don't find a bit, cut a bit off it, try to make it work. If it doesn't fit, they throw it away. Why would you then buy a house built in England in a muddy field, maybe here in a very dry field, where you build it, you then decide to hack a little bit out the wall to make a window to get the right size. You do the same with the doors. Nothing is manufactured to fit. Wastage must be an alarming figure. I remember back in the 80s looking at wastage of plasterboard loading into buildings. And my great friend Peter Rogers said to me, Bill, there's more plasterboard coming out of this building than was going in when an American drywall company was doing it. So wastage is a major, major element that we've got to cut out, because that is not sustainable. And the truth of sustainability is look across the whole field of construction, from saving time through the inception, the planning, the drawings, the producing of the drawings, and then moving forward into the installation.
So if we're looking at excuse me, the worldwide now, if people are thinking, well, you know, just how big is this? Can you give me a couple of company names of in different countries of companies that actually use this now?
Of course, there's one in Holland that I understand called B Steel, which is a lovely name, I think. B Steel, right? And they're producing houses and volumetric buildings. In England, we've worked with mais, who are probably the leading construction company. I was with mais at their inception and was at their 25th anniversary party as well. Mais, Bovis, Bellways, Barrett's.
And this is a standard build now for all of those.
All of them are using that as a part of their systems. There is still in the UK a move, they like brick and block, but to actually achieve the figures that are needed, steel framing, and I believe that steel framing is now one of the only methodologies that meet the requirements of the new building regulations, because they have adopted, the UK government have adopted modern methods of construction as a requirement. Okay, now we take the US Gypsum were the first manufacturers that I ever came across. I was then introduced through friends to Knauf, the German manufacturer. They took me to Denmark, to Danagips, to look at the Danish steel framing system, which I believe they then acquired. We have all of the housing companies now in the UK, prisons in the UK are now being built with steel framing. Okay. Now, you can't break out of that, no. Apparently.
You've got to hope not.
You've got to hope not. You've got to hope not. So the manufacturing of small hotels is another opportunity.
So I'm feeling that we're more and more behind. Every time you say something, I think, crikey, we've got a long way to go. But yes. I understand that our architects now can produce their bespoke plans with obviously the measurements, etc. It can go off to the UK, it can be received at the manufacturer, who can then produce the bill of quantity within a week.
Correct.
Which is time saving, to say the least.
Yes.
So you've got that in a week. You can then, they will then work on those designs and start to cut. And then you have other associates who will import or export from the UK, import into here, and construction can start.
Yeah. At the moment, that is the methodology that we're exploring. But we're getting closer towards the way of thinking that a machine and manufacturing in Portugal has got to be the way forward.
Yeah. So
now we're moving very quickly towards that, because yes, we've got partners in the UK who are more than willing and want to explore the marketplace. They know that I'm here. The great thing is that just before COVID, I met with a young man who I knew as a waiter at a restaurant in the Algarve, and he recognized me and we had a conversation. He's now an architect based in Lisbon. He's got new ideas. He's worked in the UK and Holland and Spain and now has his own practice in Lisbon.
Great.
And is exploring. And
this is?
Well, I call him Manny. His proper name is Emmanuel.
Fantastic. So, Bill, importantly, the aim right now is for you to bring this machine back to Portugal, and effectively have a situation here where that one unit will be able to supply and cut to the industry as opposed to the individual.
Exactly.
Instead of importing.
I think that's very important, Cathy. When we say grow the market, it is not just for our own use. We have to link in with the large construction companies. They've got tremendous amount of knowledge. They're European-wide working. We've got to link in with them. We've got to work with them alongside their projects, producing quality buildings on time.
Perfect.
To a cost that is affordable.
And that's the key.
That's the key, very much so.
Bill, thank you very much indeed. There's obviously an awful lot more that Bill can talk about with this, and as he said, he's going to be at the off-site
exposition
in Coventry next to the Coventry Football Arena, and that's the 17th and 18th
of September.
So if you are in the UK, if you want to fly into the UK, go on down. Bill will be there with Frameclad and other partners to talk about. So please feel free. Otherwise, if you'd like to contact him, please contact Conectv. Put a little note at the end for us. I'm not going to give out Bill's personal details, so alternatively contact me at Living Life Algarve if we're friends. If we're not, please make friends. Like, follow, subscribe. We're on YouTube, we're on Facebook. All our sponsors are obviously repeating the same thing, so the collaboration all round. Please join the Conectv family, and we look forward to meeting you next time. Thank you very much. Bill, thank you.
Thank you so much for the invitation.
Very welcome.
Okay.
Bamper Properties and Lifestyle. Algarve Business Awards. Art Aesthetic, Rejuvenation Therapy. Currencies for you, Global Payment Specialists. Energy Lounger, rejuvenate your body. Honest Dragon, boutique alcohol distributor, Portugal.